Right, good morning everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar today. Today we're going to be talking about the migration to the VAT Ready South African edition of Zoho Books. So Zoho Books has released its South African edition. It's probably released this about 2 months ago, just after Zoholics. It's a much anticipated feature that we've been waiting for. And today we're going to talk about the features that it gives us and the migration. So we DSL Telecom, we're a premium partner here in South Africa, and we have been partners for 13 years, and we've done multiple of these migrations. So today on the webinar, I've got myself, Paul Wilson. I'm the technical director here at DSL Telecom. We've got Matt. Welcome, Matt.
How's it, Paul? Nice to be here.
Cool. Matt's implementation project lead. And here at DSL Telecom, we've done multiple of these migrations already. And we're going to share some of the insight that we've learned doing these migrations. So let's have a look at some of the things that we're going to be going through in today's session. Just a quick look at the agenda. So today we're going to learn about the capabilities in the SA edition. So what are the new VAT capabilities that have been added? We're going to understand the prerequisites before you migrate. So things to look out for prior to migration. We're also going to do a step-by-step guide of migrating. So we're going to actually show you a migration. We've got a demo instance ready, and we're going to show you the migration in practice. And then we're going to have time for Q&A. As we go today, we're going to have some little bits of insight. So extra additional piece of information that we've picked up over the last couple of months and actually performing these migrations and doing these migrations. We've done our own migration. We've done many of these migrations for a lot of our customers. So let's look at the first little bit of advice. So the first bit of advice we have is that you need to do this on the first day of your tax reporting period. So your tax reporting period, this is your VAT period. So this is typically monthly, bi-monthly or quarterly. So this must be on day one before any transactions. Only transactions created after the migration will be incorporated into the new VAT 201 reports, and only these transactions will show in the report and will be able to be filed in the new reporting structure. Any old transactions or past transactions will still fall within the old tax rules, and this will be you'll use your existing tax summary report for this. So let's have a look at some of the features. Matt, why don't you run through some of the features that we've got in the new Zoho Books South African edition?
100%. Thank you, Paul. So yeah, firstly, obviously we have the much anticipated VAT 201 report. So this is the report that is required by SARS, and what Zoho has done is built this report into Zoho. So now it is in the correct format when submitting to SARS. Secondly, they have also then added in a VAT audit report. So this VAT audit report will allow you to track all the transactions that occurred within this VAT 201 report. Next, they've added the ability, which I think is quite a nice functionality, is they've added the ability to, firstly, you can file that VAT 201 report, but then you can also go ahead and track payments against that VAT 201 report. So you file it, and then you need to make payments against it. That ability is now there, including adding penalties, etc. Then, obviously, this is quite an obvious one, but they have introduced then standard VAT rates and standard VAT rules. So these VAT rates and VAT rules are compliant then with the South African for SARS, and these will be applied as per it should. Finally, we have two, call it additional functionalities that were added. So the first being the bill of entry. So if you have a vendor that is an overseas vendor, so it's marked as an overseas vendor, and you go create a supplier bill against that vendor, what you can then do now is create what's called a bill of entry. So this allows you to record any custom charges against that particular vendor, against for SARS, as well as any VAT payments for SARS on that bill of entry. You can then do things such as track that against your particular cost of that item. And then finally, we have the courier guide integration, which again, I think is a much anticipated feature. And this courier guide integration, once you migrate to the SA version, this will then be available. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen And I'm actually going to just walk you through each of these points one by one and just give you a little demonstration of each of these.
Matt. While Matt's sharing the screen, just a note, everyone, that obviously once you migrate to the South African edition of Books, this actually will be incorporated through the whole Zoho Finance suite. So all the Zoho Finance products will be utilize the new VAT features.
Okay, 100%. So having a look here, this is one of our demos that is currently in the South African version. So on the left, under your reports, if you were to click on that, you'll see there's now a folder called VAT. So if I click on this folder, you'll see there's that standard tax summary report. However, now in addition, there's two further reports. So these are the reports I mentioned earlier. The first, and probably the most important, being that VAT Tier 1 report. So if I click on that, you'll see over here, it gives you a screen to then go and generate this VAT Tier 1 report. So if I click generate, it's going to ask me for a start and end date in which I want to incorporate those transactions into this VAT return. So in this case, let's just use the 1st of November, click generate. And now you can see over here, here is your VAT Tier 1 report. So having a look, this is in the format that SARS requires, with the various numbers and various amounts put in the correct places. So from here, you can then go and export this if need be. And again, I mentioned earlier, you can mark this as filed. So once I'm happy and happy all the transactions should be included in this relevant filing, I would click mark as filed, just choose the date of filing being today and click OK. And now this will mark this particular report as filed. So if I close this and go back to that VAT section, you'll see over here, here is that filed report. So that being kind of the first edition, the VAT Tier 1 report. In addition, if I go back to these reports, you'll see under the VAT section, we do have that VAT audit report over here. So what this allows is if I were to click at this generate SARS audit file, allows me to choose a VAT return or a tax return, generate. And what this will do is this will go and search in the system and break down all the particular transactions that fall within this particular VAT Tier 1 report. So you can see we have done a couple in the past. If you click download, you're going to get one of these. So this is what it looks like. As you can see, it kind of just breaks down per transaction, the amount that was taxed or added to the VAT report rather, and just gives a breakdown of exactly what went into that particular VAT Tier 1 report. Cool. Then in addition is the filing and the tracking of payments. So now if I were to click on accountant, you'll see there is this new section over here. So VAT payments. So if I click on this, you'll see over here, because I went and filed that VAT Tier 1 filing, you can see it appears here, payment is then due on that particular VAT return. So what I can do from here is I can click record payment. And this will then allow me to record the payments I make to SARS straight from within Zoho Books. So I can specify the paid through account, the amount paid, etc., etc. You can, obviously, hopefully you guys don't incur any penalties, but if you do, you do have the optionality to add those penalties over here if need be. 100%. Then touching on the VAT rates and rules. So if I were to click on the settings icon, top right, you'll see there is now this VAT section over here. So if I click on this and I go to VAT rates, you'll see all your old customized rates have now been replaced with the standard rates. So these are all standard. You can't obviously delete these or change these. These are standard as per South African regulations. And these are the ones that you will then use going forward. They do also have those standard rules. As you can see here, we have our standard rate sales, standard rate purchases, etc., etc. So as an example, one of these, which is the default, what it's going to do is it's going to go and check the billing country of the customer. If the billing country of the customer is in South Africa, it will then apply the standard South African 15% standard rate. However, if the customer is outside of South Africa, it will then apply a 0% rate. So these are just the standard rules that have come in the same that matched in SARS's regulations. Cool. Then bill of entry. So as I mentioned earlier, if we were to go to a bill, so jumping to another tab here, I'm just looking at one of these bills, particularly this bill here for ANS wholesalers. So I mentioned earlier that if you have a bill and this particular vendor, in this case, ANS wholesalers, is a overseas vendor, which in this case, we did mark it as an overseas vendor. What you're able to then do is if I click on these three dots, I can then go and click create bill of entry. So over here is, and again, mentioned earlier, where I'm able to then record the customs duties and additional charges. So I can give it a number, a date, where I paid this through, and enter any customs duties that were incurred on this particular import. I can record that all here. And then alluded to this is the allocate custom duties and additional charges as landed costs. So I think this is quite a nice functionality, and Zoho did put a bit of forethought into this, that we can then take these charges and also allocate them as landed costs to that particular item, 100%. So yeah, that's the demonstration on the new features. I'm going to just hand back to Paul to run us through the next part of the slide.
Cool, thanks, Matt. Yeah, the last thing that was on our list there was the courier guide integration. We're not going to show you that, but that does come available as soon as the migration is done, and you will see that in the marketplace available to set up. Cool. So just another little bit of advice there. Just remember that all customers and vendors will need to be updated with that treatment after the migration. So what we mean by this is that currently in the global edition, users with customers using VAT would have probably had the VAT number stored in a custom field. And after the migration, there's a system field that is used for VAT number and VAT treatment. So this will need to be done after migration. All the customers will need to be updated, and the data from the VAT number and the custom field will need to be moved over to the system field. So this can only be done through an import, an export and an import. It can't be done currently via the API. So it's just a little cleanup that needs to happen after migration. So why don't we look at some of the prerequisites for migration to the SA version? So these are just things that we need to take into account prior to migration. Matt, do you want to run through these with us?
For sure. So how we've kind of planned this or set this out is there's two parts. We've got the requirements, and then we've got the suggestions. So firstly, touching on the requirements, these are things that need to be done in order for us to even go across and move to the new version. So firstly, and this might be quite obvious, is the location of your Zoho Books version needs to be set to South Africa. And again, maybe another obvious one is the base currency would also need to be set to ZAR. So those two being the most important ones. Then next, the reimbursement currency feature. So this is a feature within Zoho Expense. To get this enabled, you would have had to chat to the Zoho Expense support team. But to do this migration, you will need to chat to them again to get this disabled. Then any payment gateways that were integrated with your Zoho Books or Zoho Finance rather, these need to be disabled. I think Paul does have a little bit of some advice over there, which you can touch on. Then TDS, so tax deducted at source, that being your adjustments and your shipping. And these are just general settings that you can switch on and off. But to do this migration, these need to be disabled. And then finally, kind of obviously, you need to have your company's tax number available when doing this migration.
Let's talk about the payment gateway that Matt mentioned there. So remember that we need to disable payment gateways prior to migration. So it won't allow us to migrate unless the payment gateways are disabled. And when we've got a payment gateway installed, and existing transactions that are linked to this payment gateway or that are allocated to this payment gateway, we can't just go and delete the installation of the payment gateway because it's going to tell us that there's existing transactions. So in order to get around this, we do have a code that we can run through the console that will override this and allow us to disable the payment gateway. So if you have any troubles with payment gateways or disabling payment gateways, please contact us. We're happy to help. Alternatively, you can also contact our support and they'll be able to share the code with you. Let's look at some of the suggestions, Matt.
For sure. So yeah, we have done, as Paul alluded to earlier, we've done quite a few of these. And while doing these, we've kind of picked up a few snippets. So touching on these, we need to do this, or our suggestion that we should do this on the first day of your tax reporting period. So if you were to do this on a day that's not the first day, any transactions after this day will appear in your new VAT Tier 1 report. However, if any transactions that are dated prior to this, these will appear in your standard tax summary. So it's quite important. And our suggestion that you put this on the first day. So for this new period, you then have all your transactions fall within your new VAT Tier 1 report. And secondly, and quite an important one, and you will see when we do the actual live migration, take a data backup. So in case anything were to go wrong, it's always important that you have your data with you. And then once you start, you aren't able to, once you start the migration, you aren't able to use the system. So no user is able to use the system. So when you do this migration, give yourself some time when there will be no users using the system, and also some time to allow you to action. Maybe something pops up and you need to fix it. Give yourself some time to action any of those challenges that might appear.
Let's look at another little piece of advice there. So any recurring invoices or bills will need to be updated with the VAT treatment. So just like we have to update our customers, mentioning earlier that we must make sure that our vendors and customers are updated, we also need to update any recurring invoices or bills. So we do this by going into each recurring invoice or bill, and we manually remove the customer, re-add the customer back, and then save it to make sure that it updates the VAT treatment for that specific recurring transaction. Okay, so I think it's time to jump into a migration. I think we got one set up, hey Matt. Let's jump in and let's do a live migration to the SA edition.
For sure. So let me just share my screen again. So yeah, we have one of our demo systems. In this demo system, it is still in the global edition. So the one thing actually I think is quite important to note is this migration is only for systems that were global edition prior to when Zoho released the South African version. If you were to go get Zoho Books now, you're not going to need to do this migration. It will come standard with the SA version built in. So looking here, we can see that this particular organization, there is a migration due, and we can see that by looking in the top left over here. If I click on this, it's going to take me to the migration page. So in this migration page, here is where we will action the migration. Firstly, it just gives you some key considerations before the migration. One being that once you successfully migrate to the South African edition, this cannot be reverted. And then secondly, the current date will be the migration date for the organization. And we did kind of allude to this, that any transactions created prior to this won't appear in your new VAT Tier 1 report. I'm just going to click OK. And then we can have a look at the screen. So firstly, it gives you the new features. So the specific VAT rules and rates, the VAT Tier 1 report, and the VAT audit report, all coming with this new South African version. Then below gives you some points to note for the migration. We did touch on all of these, so I'm not going to go through them again, but you're more than welcome to read these one by one. Then at the bottom, we have the section where it gives you the prerequisites. So I mentioned that we have some requirements that need to be actioned before we can migrate across to the South African version. So these would be part of those requirements. We have some unsupported preferences at the moment, so we need to disable these. So to disable them, it's as simple as clicking proceed to disable. You will get this pop-up. So in this pop-up, it just gives you a list of those particular preferences that need to be disabled. We got those adjustments and shipping charges. So those are part of the TDS. And then we also have a feature or a transaction type that is called sales receipts. So sales receipts doesn't work in the South African version. So we need to disable those as well. So some of our customers actually have got this wrong. What we need to do is we need to tick the boxes to disable them and not untick it. It might be a bit counterintuitive, but we need to tick them and click disable. And now those particular preferences have been disabled. We can go to the next step. So at the bottom here, we can then see it asks us a question, is your business registered for VAT? So I suppose most of the time it would be a yes. In that case, what we're going to do is we're going to then go and map our old VAT rates to the new standard VAT rates. However, if your business is not VAT registered, what you need to go do is you need to go, and it kind of says this here, you need to go and mark all your tax rates as inactive before you can proceed to the migration. So in that case, you go to the settings, go to your VAT rates, and just go mark them all as inactive. In this example I'm going to do here, I'm going to just treat us as having a particular VAT registered organization. And now the step would be to then go and do those mappings. If you don't want to bring some old rates with you, so say, for instance, we had that standard old 14% VAT, and we don't want to actually bring that particular VAT with us, what we can do is we can mark it as an active, and that will then mean we don't need to actually map it to the new VAT rate going forward. So I'm going to choose yes, and then I'm going to go to the next step. And the bottom one, little information icon, just letting you know that it probably would be a good idea to take a data backup. So we would click this, and this will allow us to take a data backup. This can take some time, so maybe just have that in the back of your head before doing this migration, that you need to do this data backup, and this could take a bit of time. Once we're happy, we will just click proceed. Again, it's going to give us some important notes to note before doing the migration. Again, once you start, you won't be able to use books until you've finished. And once you are finished, it will redirect you to the South African version. I'm going to click proceed. And now it's going to take us to the particular configuration screen. So up top, it's going to ask us for our VAT registration number. So a nice little added functionality that Zoho did add is it allows us to do validations on those particular VAT registration numbers. So if I click on this, it's going to take us to this VAT vendor search. So this will allow us to search vendors by VAT number and vice versa, search VAT numbers by vendor. This doesn't do any sort of validation when you type it into the actual screen over here. All it is a link that takes you straight to SARS's website where you can do the search. So as an example, I can enter one of our VAT number. Click search. And you can see over here, it brings us up our particular VAT trading name. So this also is the same when adding the VATs for customers and vendors. Allows us to do the validation. So a good rule of thumb might be that when you are entering customers' information and they give you a VAT number, maybe go to this button, click on it, type that number in, and make sure that that trading name that of the customer matches with the trading name that appears here. It just allows you to ensure that the VAT number is right. So once we're happy, we can just go and enter a VAT number in here. Cool. Then below, we have this international trade. So if we enable this, this will allow us to choose customers and vendors as being or marking them as overseas. So enabling the bill of entry mentioned earlier. If you don't have any customers or vendors that are overseas currently, my suggestion would still be to enable this feature now. The reason I say this is once you go and do file a VAT return, you aren't going to be able to change any of the settings. So what you want to do is if you have any if you have a foresight that you might be using overseas vendors or customers in the future, rather just tick this. It has no cons to it. It just adds the feature going forward. Then we have our VAT registered on. So this will be the date you do the migration. So this is not the date that you were registered with SARS. This is rather the date that you're doing the migration to the South African version. So again, we suggest doing it the first day of the month. In this case, I'm just going to say the 13th today. And then generate first tax return. This will be generally the same day as the VAT registered on date. Once I'm happy, I'll just click next. And then this is going to take us to the mapping screen. So you'll see in this organization, we only have one tax rate, that's VAT, 15%. If you have any further, they will all appear over here. And all we need to do is map them from the old custom rates to the new rates that are standard with the SA version of Zoho Books. So clicking here, you can see the standard 15%, I would then go map with standard rates over here. Click that. Now I'm happy. I will click next. And now it says tax return settings updated successfully. What it's going to do here is going to take us to customer and vendor details that allow us to do to update those treatments and VAT registration numbers of those customers and vendors. So this is mandatory to do. It's not going to let you proceed until you have done this. What it's showing us here is it's showing us customers that have recurring entities within Zoho Books. So in this case, a recurring invoice. So ABC Projects and Burns Business Finance, both of them have recurring invoices. And this Zoho has built in a tool that allows us to go and update those particular recurring invoices and bills using this feature over here. So what I need to do, and I think this is also important to bear in mind when doing this migration, if you do have a lot of recurring invoices or a lot of recurring bills, this will take you a bit longer. So maybe keep that in mind when doing the migration, just to ensure that you get this done. Again, no one can use the system until this is done. So over here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark these both as not non-VAT registered. If you do mark it as VAT registered, then you will be required to enter the particular VAT registration number. Once I'm happy, I will just click save. You can click save. You don't have to click save. You can just go next as well. And then you see over here, we have a vendor. Again, same idea. This vendor has a recurring bill. So this tool built in to then go allow us to update the treatment for that recurring bill. The one thing we just do advise though is to check those recurring bills and invoices after the fact. This is a tool that Zoho's built. However, sometimes it seems to not always do exactly what it's supposed to. So rather just rather safe than sorry, go check and have a look. Have those recurring bills and invoices been updated correctly? So in this case here, again, non-VAT registered. Okay, sorry, I rather will have to save. So I want to save that. I'll then need to jump back here and save this. And now you can see this complete button is green. So now I can go and complete the migration. So that's pretty much it in terms of actually migrating the system across. Those are all the steps. So now we are in the South African version. So yeah, pretty much as simple as that. Having a look, you can see that you're in the South African version by the fact that there's no big button up top here that says Migrate to South African Edition. Another way to look is if you go to the reports, you will see then in the reports, you got that VAT section and you have your VAT 201 reports over there. Then some cleanup rather that needs to be done after the fact. The nice thing about this cleanup after the fact is users can still use the system. So the time that it consumes is just kind of filling in and doing the mapping, filling in those details. From here, users can continue using the system. It's just a bit of cleanup that needs to be done in the background. And this cleanup kind of consists of updating those customers and vendors VAT treatments and VAT numbers, and then also updating recurring bills and invoices. So I will just walk you through one of those. Let's go, as an example, go update some customers information. So if I click on sales and go to customers, you'll see if I were to go into any one of these customers, let's take this one as an example, and I click edit, you can see the VAT treatment hasn't been set for this particular customer. So all the touch on this, we can do this manually one at a time. So you can click on here and example, choose VAT registered, enter a number, and click save. Okay, for this case, I'd rather just do VAT not registered and click save. Sorry, there's a custom field. So this is the custom field that we used in the past to go and enter VAT numbers. So this is obviously mandatory. And that was what was stopping us. So I can actually choose VAT registered, enter a VAT number, save, and you can see it saves there. So these customers' VAT treatments haven't been updated, so we can do that manually one by one like that. Obviously, that might take some time. So our approach that we suggest is rather doing an export. So exporting all the customers out, then going and filling in all their VAT treatments and filling in all their VAT numbers and doing imports again. So I do have a file that I've already gone and exported all the customers' data out and entered their particular VAT treatments and VAT numbers. So I'll open that here. So you can see all we do have is we have the customer's display name. So this is going to allow this import to find the correct customer to update. We do then have the old VAT number. So in this system here, we used a custom field called VAT number to store the customer's VAT number. What I just did is I took that information, copied it across, and added a new column called VAT number. I then went and entered all those VAT numbers in here. So I pasted these from here to here. And then finally, we have the VAT treatments. So you need to specify how should this particular customer be treated in terms of VAT. So obviously all the ones with the VAT numbers would need to be VAT registered. The rest, it depends kind of where they are. So either overseas or non-VAT registered. So I've got this file. So what I'm going to do now is go do an import. So going back to books, clicking the three dots up top here. I would then choose import customers, say continue. And then it's going to allow us to choose the file. So I'm going to click here and choose that file that I'd specified earlier. Like that. Then duplicate handling. What we want to do is override the customer's information. So we're going to choose that. And then we're going to click next. Over here, here's where we'll do a mapping. So the key important one being the customer display name, because we need to go and override customer's information. We want to map that display name, and it is actually mandatory. And then you'll see there's new fields. We've got this VAT treatment. So I have mapped this VAT treatment to the VAT treatment column within the file. And then scrolling down, we have our old VAT number. And then we should have our new VAT number here somewhere as well.
Look for that. Second section. Tax details.
100%. So clicking here, we can then go and fill in this new VAT number like that. And we will then say next. So now what it's going to do is it's going to take that file and kind of bring it into the system. So it's going to then specify if there's any issues. And if not, it will then go and import that information. So having a look here, we can see that 70 customers are ready to import. It did give us 17 records that were skipped. So if we were to click on this, you can see here, it's gone and specified duplicate row found in your CSV. So we do, and we have experienced in the past, because we're doing the matching on display name. And if you have the same customer with the same display name in your system, so let's use this ANSI test, you'll see line 4 and line 35 had the exact same customer. It's not going to allow us to do the import to override that. So for these cases where you've got the duplicate customers, all you'll need to do is you will need to do these manually. So if there's any duplicates, kind of download these skipped rows and just work through them manually and going to update those individual ones manually. Cool. I'll click import. You'll see there's this VAT number cannot be empty. This is due to the old custom field we had there. I should have made it non-mandatory, but that is the reason that you're getting this error there, and rather not due to the fact of the actual VAT number going forward. Then you can see 70 of those were updated. So now all these customers have the correct VAT treatments, as well as the VAT numbers if they are VAT registered. So that was kind of point one. And then going across back to our home screen, you'll see over here. And so it does kind of give a nice screen to show you where, or rather what needs to be done. It says recurring transactions. So you'll see we did go and update the recurring transaction information on the previous screen when doing the migration. You'll see that the customers ones worked. However, for the bills, it didn't seem to work. So all we need to do is go and actually have a look at them. So I can click here, update field. And this will take me to my recurring bills here in the view of update tax information. So all I need to do in this case is to update them is I need to go in here and I need to go and choose the VAT treatment for this particular recurring bill. So in this case, let's just say it was not VAT registered. I will click update, click save, and now that particular recurring bill has been updated with the correct VAT treatment. So our suggestion is to go through each and every one of the recurring, in this case, recurring invoices, even though we are sure it worked. Let's rather go through each individually one at a time and go and update those and check that those VAT treatments are correct. I think with that, pretty much concludes the demonstration. As you can see, not too much of a challenge, pretty straightforward. And yeah, hand it back to you, Paul.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for making it look so easy. I think it is quite an easy operation, but it is important to make sure that we're checking and we doing our due diligence after the fact. The migration is to make sure that everyone is aware of how things work thereafter, so that it can be cleaned up and that there isn't any hiccup thereafter.
For sure, and also keeping in mind the time that needs to be kept to do this migration. So obviously we don't want users to be stuck off the system. So make sure you have that time set aside to do this actual migration.
Yeah, and let all the users know that not to create any transactions until this migration is complete and you've given the all clear.
For sure.
Okay, let's have a look at another little piece of expert advice. I think Matt did mention this when you're setting up or doing the migration. But once you file a VAT report, so after you've done the migration and you file your first VAT report, you cannot change any of the VAT settings. So any of the VAT settings, like do you deal with overseas customers, or any of those settings cannot be changed after after you filed your first report. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I have seen some questions coming through. So what we are going to do, we are going to address these questions in the Q&A. If there's anything that isn't answered or any further questions that people haven't answered, we are going to redirect you to a form when we end the webinar or when you exit the webinar, and you're welcome to fill in that form, and we'll answer any questions that haven't been fully addressed in today's session. So let's have a look at some of the questions. I did see some coming through. So let's look. Here's the first question. So the first question is, will integration into SARS for VAT returns be available in this release? If not, will it be on the cards for future revision? So at the moment, there is no direct integration into SARS. So like Matt showed you, they've given us a link where we can validate that numbers, but there's no direct link to SARS for filing the returns. But this is in the roadmap. We are working on it, or Zoho is working on it. But it is just a matter of getting in touch or getting linked up with SARS. So it is in the roadmap. We don't have any ETA, but it is projected to come in the future releases.
Yeah, then I have a question here. So I'm just going to project on the screen. So this question, how will this pull through to CRM as we have our customers being pulled in from the CRM? So actually a very good question as well. So obviously you can integrate the Zoho CRM within Zoho Books. So what needs to be done there is you need to just go and change your mapping. So you'll need to go to that integration, change the mapping so that maybe you have a custom field within Zoho CRM that stores the customer's VAT number. You'll need to change that mapping so that the mapping is no longer from maybe an old custom field in Zoho Books, but rather to a new standard field within Zoho Books. And then also the VAT treatment, you might need to add as a specific field within CRM that you can then do that mapping of the VAT treatment across as well.
Yeah, great question. And I think it's also important to note that goes for any integration. So any integration where we're integrating or sending customers from a third-party system or a Zoho system into Zoho Books, we must address the VAT treatment and the VAT number and utilize the new VAT treatment and the new VAT number. There was also a follow-on question to that. If you have a Zoho 1 license, let me just project this. So if one has a Zoho 1 license, which would be better, CRM import and sync to books, or as per demo method of sync CRM, assuming two-way sync is enabled. So great question. So if we reinitiate the sync, it will pull the details from the CRM. This is always this would always happen anyway. My suggestion or our suggestion is to also do the export and the import, because we're not sure whether the team or the accounting team had created any contacts that didn't sync for whatever reason back to CRM, and just ensure that all the syncs or all the customers have been effectively updated. But just a note to remember there, like Matt said, this is just a way of updating the data in bulk. So once the migration is done, you can go ahead and transact. It's important for the teams that are utilizing, working in Zoho Books and creating invoices to make sure they're going to check that is the VAT treatment enabled? Is the template showing the VAT number correctly? Is all of that done correctly? And then carry on transacting as per normal. Another question, how far back can I migrate my data? Just check this. So migrating data, so remember the data sticks in the system, so we're not necessarily migrating data, but what we're doing is we're setting up the new way of working with that, so which uses the new structure from the day that the migration happens. And this is why we suggest that this migration happens on the first day of the tax period, so that all transactions within that tax period are handled going forward. Any past transactions will still fall within the old VAT types, and those will still be. You'll still need to use the tax summary report for your VAT submission. So even after the migration, you'll still do at least probably one VAT submission, which you'll use the old summary report. I hope that answers the question. Is there any other questions? Now, here we go. We've got another question. So if a client is still awaiting VAT registration, once we migrate, they will be non-VAT vendor. Will we be able to still prep the client and suppliers by adding their VAT number for when the client is liable for that? Great question. So if the organization has been created as a non-VAT registered organization, can we go and update? Can we still go and add VAT numbers for clients? Matt, do you know the answer to that?
Yes. So you can change that VAT number or change their VAT treatment at any time. So if they were not VAT registered and now they are, you can change that within Zoho Books quite easily.
I think the question is more, if it's a non-registered VAT, can we still add the VAT details to customers? I'm going to go with you can, but we will confirm that. You're welcome to fill in the form afterwards, and we'll run it through one of our demo accounts, and we'll make sure that that test is done for you. I think we can add the VAT details, but you won't be creating necessarily VAT reports.
Then yeah, I do have one question here. So let me project it as well. So just to give you a bit of context to this question, it was mentioned earlier that there can be cases where you might have vendors with multi-VAT. So the example that was used here by Nicholas, and thank you for your input, is that SPAR. So SPAR might have their own franchises, and each franchise has their own VAT number. So it was mentioned that, is there a better way to handle this? And what was mentioned was there need to be two separate vendors. I think the best way to handle this would be to rather have two separate vendors. So each vendor would need to be allocated only one VAT number. So if you come across a case where you have two vendors, or rather one vendor with two VAT numbers, rather go and create two separate vendors, each with their own VAT numbers. And this can kind of also apply, I suppose, with currencies as well. If you don't have the ability to do multi-currency per vendor, you would split it to have two vendors. The same kind of applies here. You would rather have two separate vendors, each with their own VAT numbers.
Okay, we've got another question here. Let me just project this one. Do I need to migrate if I do not use VAT? So the suggestion is to still migrate so that you are in the correct structure for one day when you maybe want to start using VAT, or one day when you're required to be VAT registered. So it is better to move into the South African edition. Remember, other things become available like the query guide integration. So if it's an item like that you're going to need, then it is better to do the migration and start adding the tax numbers and have the correct structure before, so that you don't have to do it later further down the line. Okay, then just one more question there. We're gonna run out of time soon. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna answer 2 more questions, and then, like I said earlier, we are going to redirect to a page where further questions can be filled out, and we're happy to take further questions offline, or if anyone needs help with the migration or anything, we're happy to jump in and help where we can. Okay, so the question I have here is there any way this will affect my financial statements post-migration to the new South African Zoho books? It shouldn't affect your financial statements too much, but just remember that you will have these new input and output VAT accounts in your chart of account. So it is important that when doing financial statements for the year where the migration happened, just to ensure that you are pulling all the correct accounts in, so that you're reporting correctly. Okay, then another question here: how will the subscription module billing be affected by the migration? So as mentioned earlier, it's all Zoho Finance tools will be migrated to the South African edition and will all incorporate the new tax rules. So any invoices or transactions created from Zoho Billing will use the new VAT rules available. That's why on some of the prerequisites, they were related to some of the other apps. I think there was a Zoho Expense that had a specific setting. So there are some relations there. And then the last question we've got here is, can we elaborate on the Courier Guy? So the Courier Guy integration is basically an integration that is synced to Zoho Inventory. So basically what it does is, when you once you've got a package and you create a package, you can create a delivery for that, and it will automatically create your waybill, and it will request the pickup from Courier Guy. So all of that is done automatically. Again, we are going to have the form afterwards. Please fill it in. We're happy to set up a demo, run through it with you, and just show you how this works. But we're really running out of time for today's session. Yes, the billing module, does it add any of the VAT or the once-off fees? Yes, it will be adding VAT to once-off fees too. So everything will be incorporated, and it will use the new VAT rules for all these items.